How do you all know? How do you know that they were hardworking? Were you on their squad with them? If you weren't from Centennial, you shouldn't be able to say that. How do you know they're hardworking? Everybody was quick to say they were hardworking. How do you know that this team wasn't just faking it? How do you know that they just didn't have coaches that produced all the files, and that when they got home, they bragged about how they were able to win? Have you all ever met that kid? The one that brags about how being able to win without doing work? Yeah? Don't be that kid. How do you know?
Well, if you have watched your debates and you their knowledge and arguments they read.
Excellent! Okay, so we're starting to get a more explanation of how we know that they actually do hard work. Their ability to speak about the subject matter without staring at their laptops and just reading cards. What else? In your hand, yeah. Exactly. And this is the part that I think that most people overlook and miss. The greatest influencing factor in how the rest of the community knows if you work hard or not is what your squad says about you and what your coaches say about you. If you have a reputation on your own squad for not finishing assignments, if your reputation with your coach is that you don't highlight cards, if your reputation with the peers on your squad is that you only take other people's work and win with it, you won't have a reputation in the debate community for being hardworking. If, however, you are the kid that as a first year or sophomore stands up in your squad and says, give me a tough assignment, I want to try it out. I might fail, but give it to me, let me try. If you're the kid that volunteers, has their work in on time, and does the files the right way, something that benefits the whole squad, that's how that reputation gets out. And being a hardworking debater is an extremely important part of making sure that people believe you when you stand up to give your last speech ever. The judges want to reward hard work, okay? There's nothing more frustrating for a coach or a judge than the kid who has an immense amount of talent and doesn't work. Okay, why would that be so frustrating? Yeah.
It's like they're not reaching their potential.
Exactly. You want to know why? Because we do this activity to be around brilliant people. All right? We could do a bunch of other things, but we do this week in and week out because you all are legitimately brilliant. There are people in this room that are going to change the world. Whether that's for the better or for the worse is yet to be decided. There are people in this room who are going on someday to do something significant for humanity. And we have a chance at this crucial little tiny sliver of window in your lives to be a part of helping train you in a method of arriving at decisions, which is what debate is. So for us, what we love is watching someone fulfill their potential. Now, whether or not that means you don't clear your last tournament ever, that's not as important. We often want that for you because we want it because you want it. But the reality is, nothing is more frustrating to me than when an awesome kid steps on the Wake squad and says, I kind of want to do debate. Okay, fine. Kind of want to do debate. And then their senior year, they say, I really want to do debate. You say, great, awesome, let's do this together. And then halfway through, you realize that they didn't really mean that. That they're not going to try their hardest. That they made the goal to be the best version of themselves they can be, and they're not actually working for it. And the reason that's frustrating is not because we're going to get lost here or there. It's because they're not going to be able to look themselves in the mirror at the end of their debate career and say, this right now is the best version of myself as a debater. That's what we want. We want the very last debate you had. Whether you win or you lose, you can walk down the hall, go to the restroom, look at yourself in the mirror and say, this is it. This is the best version of myself as a debater. And you know how I got here? Because I worked my tail off to get to this moment. Whether I won or lost my last debate, I can look myself in the eyes and say, there isn't anything else I could have done. This is the best version of myself possible. That's the kids we celebrate. Those are great debaters. The kid that's like, yeah, but I probably could have won the TOC if I really wanted to. Okay, Roman numeral 4, 10 key differences between judges and debaters. Number 10, judges have made a commitment to the activity debaters are passing through. So at some point in time, most of your judges had to decide how they wanted to spend their weekends. Now, for some of us that made the decision to be a lifer in debate, we decided at some point in time that we were going to give up certain aspects of our lives to get a chance to do this with you all. I'll give you a tiny example. Directors of debate do not make as much money as they would if they were lawyers. Okay? That's a pretty straightforward argument. I think I can demonstrate that statistically if I had to. Directors of debate give up way more time away from their families than almost any other job that exists. The high school coaches blow my mind every year when I hear what their travel tournament schedule is. 13, 14, 15, 16 weekends, many of them in a row, away from their families. Literally stepping out the door, not able to be home if there was an emergency, not able to be there to see their kid go to their soccer game, not able to be there for their significant other who's doing something important in their lives. They're just physically not there. And the reason is because they've chosen to be with you. Now, imagine Friday night, 10 p.m., like Rubai said, I have to judge you screaming at each other in cross-sex. And you start to ask yourself, what in the hell am I doing? The point we're getting at here is that judges see the activity as a longitudinal benefit over time that we want to participate in. Debaters are like short-term, give me the win, give me the win, give me the win, give me the win. And oftentimes the sacrifices they make in the name of the short-term, give me the win, give me the win, challenge the reason why people have made the decision to stay in the debate community for as long as possible. Like we've been joking about whale Malthus a lot in our lab. If I really have to decide, like the final round of the TOC on whale Malthus, then it challenges the core of like, oh, never mind, I can't say that, Calvin will take. Okay, number 9. Debaters think that swearing makes you look cool. Judges think it reduces your credibility. So, do you know what it feels like when you see a middle school kid try to curse for the first time? They kind of like put the words together the wrong way. Ass hat. You're like, kind of close. Kind of close. The way that feels for you is how it feels for us. All right? When we see you curse, what it looks like to us is a high school kid trying to be cool. Right? And nobody, it doesn't, when you're the cool kid watching somebody try to be cool, you're like, come on, don't try to be cool. Does that make sense? So when you're the adult in the room and you can drop an F-bomb whenever you want to, it just looks weird when the high school kid is doing it. It doesn't make you look cool. It may make you look cool to your peers, and they, of course, can write their own ballots that says you won. But if you walk the people in the back of the room, don't curse. Number 8, judges have a ton of things competing for their mental attention. Debaters are 100% focused on the moment. So let's play a little game called What Actually Happens in the Doubles. Okay? Doubles take place Monday morning, don't they? Here are the things going through the judge's mind during the doubles. When you're trying to win a huge upset debate, it's about to be a bid round. If you could just win this doubles, you'll be in the Arcas. It's an Arca level tournament. I'm so excited. Here's what I have to get done as a judge in the doubles. First of all, I have to get all of the kids, including the kids that didn't clear, to the van in time or downstairs in time to get to the tournament. Which, by the way, if you've ever been the kid that didn't clear and was 10 minutes late, now you understand why that's so frustrating, right? Because everybody else had to wait to get a chance to debate the doubles or judge or whatever it is. Number 2, I gotta check out the hotel. Checking out the hotel is oftentimes a nightmare. Why? Because the hotel's like, what rooms were you in? I'm like, I don't know. There's like 20 rooms under Atchison. Can't you just find them? Like, no. I have to dig out all the room numbers, and then it all has to be charged on one particular MasterCard, but the university wants me to have an itemized receipt, and if I'm in the state of North Carolina or someplace nearby, it has to be a tax-exempt form of the receipt. The person at the counter has no clue how to do that, so I have to walk them through how that works. So checking out the hotel is a big thing. Then I have to coordinate schedules for who's going to go back and win, especially the kids that didn't clear, have to be able to get back, who are the drivers, how are they going to do that. Then I have to think about how am I going to get food, because the tournament's not providing food on Elam Day. So accurately get food for the debaters and for the people who didn't clear in a particular moment. On top of all of that, I've got to worry about the fact that when I get home, I have to grade 1 million papers that have to get back to the kids handed in tomorrow. That's what I'm thinking about when you are at top speed blazing through a theory block. Does that make sense? We are thinking about different things than you are at the key moments of the tournament. Now, go all the way to the end of the night, the final round. If you listen to the Aristotle definition of the ability to identify all available means of persuasion in a given moment, if you understand why speaking to high school seniors is different than speaking to high school elementary school kids, we're all on the same, elementary school kids, we're on the same page. Why is it different debating in the finals and debating in the doubles? Why are the judges different? Tired. Mostly running on adrenaline. Who judges the final round? Rarely volunteers. But sometimes, like a major national tournament, who judges? Who's obligated to judge the final round? The teams that lost in the semis. If you lose in the semis, your judge has to judge 1 round beyond their commitment based on how far your school got. So the people that judge the final round are oftentimes the coaches of the team you just beat in semis. On top of that, it's sometimes the host institution will say, to let some people go home early, we'll put in our own people. What have they been doing all day? Cleaning classrooms, running around like crazy to make sure that there's nothing broken. They're running a tournament, and now they've subbed in. This is the first round they've judged on the entire tournament, which means they have no clue what's changed over the course of the tournament politics debate. They have no clue what argument has been winning significant debates. They're stepping into the tournament for the first time in the final round. Does everybody see what I'm doing here? If you debate the final round like it's the doubles, you're increasing the chance that you lose. So understanding how to be persuasive in those moments is a key component of it, and that's what the judges have competing for the mental attention. Number 7, debaters believe that any dropped argument should win them the debate. Judges believe in impact assessment even of dropped arguments. I can't tell you how many times people have been like, 1AR number 3 was dropped. And I'm like, yes it was. They're like, but it was dropped. And I'm like, I get it, I really do. It was dropped. Yes, it was dropped. But, so what? The impact of the dropped argument has to be something more than it was simply dropped. And debaters see that act as frustrating. And the reason is because they think it's not their job to have to explain what the implication of it is because their team dropped it. So it's conceded, it's true. And if it's true with a capital T, then we're done. This is over with, it's dropped. That's not how judges evaluate debates. That's a very frustrating thing. 6, judges are tired and debaters are running on adrenaline. It's a part of what we said before for competing for mental attention, but it's the truth. Judges are really tired. When you have ever been a judge that has had to judge a full commitment before and then judge Elam debates, it's a whole different kind of tired. It's a kind of tired that the reason why debaters don't really get this tired in the same way is because at the end point for you is an end game that you're striving for. You want a trophy or you want a win or you want something you can go home with. What does the judge get to go home with? The judge doesn't have something driving them on from round to round. Now, the best judges do things to make sure that they can actually be a good judge. So they go to bed early enough, they make sure that they actually, can do it. But not all of them do that. In fact, a lot of them don't. One of my debaters lost the octafinals of the NDT on a 3-2 decision when one of the 3 judges fell asleep in the one of mine. Head down on the table. We were naked. Head down on the table. One of the judges just flat fell asleep. What do you do as a debater? You're like, chop chop, there we go, whoa, let's work this out together. Our high school coach said he used to walk around and drop a book and be like, and boom, that's when they've lost everything. With 5 seconds left, and they'd be like, oh yes, they lost everything. Fell asleep in the middle of a debate. It just happens. People are just that tired. So if you think everything is crisp and clear to you, it's just not to the judges. And those are people who are actually you're trying to persuade. Number 5, debaters think that assessment is a sign of intervention. The best debates in college and in high school could have been won by either team. You follow that? The best debates could have been won by either team. A decision was made, or a mistake was made that changed the outcome of the debate. But assuming that the team had not made that mistake or had changed their decision, they could have won. Now, that's awesome. That is such a fun thing. That's what makes debate so phenomenal, is that I can go and sit for 2 hours, and at the end of those 2 hours, need another 45 minutes to come to a decision because the debate was just that awesome. But in those really high-tech debates, in those really awesome debates, in those debates where I could be persuaded to vote either way, I'm going to have to assess one side versus the other. If it was just so easy that I could see the formula and vote F, then I could do that in under 5 minutes. But when I start my post round and say, I assessed the affirmative is more persuasive than the negative on the question of uniqueness, here's why. And you flip out and say, they didn't say that. Yeah, of course they didn't say that. Because they only had 2 hours to debate. And if we had all had another hour, you probably would have done a lot more, but you didn't. So I have to assess in this moment how I'm going to vote in a situation. And debaters see that as intervention and get angry. What should you do with that, though? What should you do with that information? And when somebody starts to say to you, I assess this versus this. Yeah, comment.
You usually to see how you'll judge the future.
Yeah, predictability. You're looking to see their patterns of thought. If you can hear them say out loud, I assess the uniqueness debate one way because the sources were more qualified, now you know what you have to say next time. But if you just get angry and see his intervention, you're going to miss a chance to win the next debate. Number 4, judges believe that debate is a good activity and worthy of protecting. Debaters have no problems flippantly saying, burn it down. Debaters have no problems doing things flippantly to burn it down. Quite literally, this year at a college tournament, for the metaphor of burning it down, someone set a ream of paper on fire in a classroom after burning the tournament down. What I'm getting at here is the flippancy with which you say the debate community, burn it down, irrelevance, let's do something really radical because we can, because it's fun, let's do something to really challenge everything. It's not that any one of us are arguing that you shouldn't have space to make those arguments, right? That Ethos lecture is going to be a place where I'm going to show you how you can do some of those stuff. I'm not arguing that you don't have a right to say the debate community should change. In fact, I hope that you do, because if the debate community is ever going to change, it's going to happen because of you all, not us. But if you do something that puts the entire debate community at risk, like say, I think drugs should be legalized, watch me freebase. If you do something that puts the entire debate community at risk, then you're challenging a commitment that a ton of judges have made in their lives to try to make something out of the debate community. So you're way better off figuring out a way to construct a persuasive narrative about how the debate community should change rather than doing something that threatens the existence of the entire debate community. And you may not think it's a big deal, but I mean, there's like cameras in this room right now, right? Where aren't you on camera anymore? Any one debate round in high school debate could easily be the next cover of CNN. It could just so easily be, right? 4 high school debaters get into a fist fight. Easily. People would love that. They would easily put that on CNN. High school debater thinks it would be funny to like flip all the desks over, you know, like all that could so easily become the end of the debate community. It's a fragile place. Number 3, debaters think that it is a weakness to admit that their opponent is ahead on something. And judges want you to be truthful. You know how frustrating it is for a debater to stand there so flippantly and say out loud when I'm judging, this uniqueness card they have is terrible. It's so terrible that when the round is over with, you're going to ask them to delete it from their computer and never read it again. It's so bad that we're pretty confident that it wasn't actually something that was written in the English language. We think Google Translate tried to figure this one out and just got as close as it could. And then I get the uniqueness card afterwards. I'm like, this is actually a really damn good card. And afterwards I'm like, I kind of totally disagree with the nut here. I thought this uniqueness card was great. They're like, yes, I agree. What are you doing? You would build so much more trust with the judge if you just looked him in the eye and said to him or her, guess what? They're way ahead on the uniqueness debate. When you get the cards afterwards, you're going to be impressed. They got an AP card from a week ago that is awesome. Now, here's why they still lose. If you were willing to just be honest about the places on the floor you're behind, you would build so much more credibility on the places on the floor that you're ahead. But debaters think admitting anything that their opponent's done right is a sign of weakness. The best debaters are very quick to say what their opponents are doing right and then why they still win the debate. And if you can do that, you're going to win a monster number of debates. If you pretend that you're the JV debater that's won every single question in the debate, every single sheet of paper in the debate, every single argument in the debate, you're just laundry listing everything you've won, that doesn't build credibility with the judge. Building credibility requires admitting when you may or may not be right. Number 2, judges and debaters have different definitions of speed. Judges and debaters have different definitions of speed. People have heard different definitions. I've repeated this one. It came from a combination of people, Ross Smith, the Duck, a bunch of other people. Speed is the number of arguments or ideas, however you want to say that, effectively communicated per minute that the judge will expect the opponent to respond to. The number of ideas effectively communicated per minute that the judge will expect the opponent to respond to. Now, the reason why that's a different definition than you all is that oftentimes debaters think my strategy is to take a particular issue and either go very deep on it, like I'm going to read 20 uniqueness cards, and read them all blazingly speed, totally unclear, or they just think it's about getting it out there and then in the rebuttal they'll slow down enough for people to be able to understand what the actual argument is. If it's not effectively communicated per minute, it's not an idea, it's not speed. It's actually very slow at that point in time. You haven't communicated much. Think about it. If I have to go back and reread the 20 cards to figure out what your argument was, that wasn't a very fast form of communication at all. I, in fact, have to do twice the work. than if I just listened to you and understood it the first time. Judges and debaters have different definitions of speed. Understand the judge's definition, you'll be way more persuasive. And last but not least, number 1, debaters think that judges should take into account how good they are when making their decision. And judges think any given Sunday, any team can win no matter how good they supposedly are before the debate. This happens, I think, most often when a person is debating in front of a judge that they haven't met before, but assumes that the judge will know what their rep is. Now, if you work hard based on this lecture and other lectures, and you get some ethos, and you really have a reputation for being a hard-working, phenomenal debater that everybody likes to watch and everybody loves, and then you debate that team that's gunning for you, that team that has stayed up to make sure that before they ever came to the tournament, they had a great strategy, worked with their coaches, watched tapes of you debating, they're just ready for you. And they beat you. And you happen to have a judge in the back of the room that's willing to say out loud that you lost. You freaking out and saying, but don't you know who I am? Don't you know what I've done? Is totally the opposite direction you should be going in that situation. You should realize that your opponent is worthy of respect, and in that moment work very hard to do what you can to beat them again. Because they're not necessarily going to always just be in a position of not having enough rep. My last debate ever, I talk about all the time, was against Callum Matheson. He beat me in the octaves of the NDT. We were the 8-0 top seed, the second-ranked team in the country. Callum was a scrappy kid from Michigan State that was winning a bunch of debates, but wasn't necessarily the top-ranked team in the country. He wasn't number 1, we were number 2. And he beat me on a 3-2 decision. And you know why there were 2 judges that voted for us? We needed a 3rd rep judge. I needed 1 more judge that cared about who I was. And I didn't get it. I got 3 judges that actually evaluated the debate as it was, and Callum crushed us. And I can readily admit that and say before all of you and say I lost my last debate ever, and I'm happy with that. The point I'm getting at is, if you rely on rep, if you only think you're going to get it done because of rep, you are eventually going to get a panel of people that will stare you down and say, not this time. Make sense? Okay, now, transitioning then, what could you do here? What could you do in the next couple of weeks to positively influence or decrease your ethos? First of all, here's what's weird about the debate community. We are all your instructors, we care deeply about you, and we're your judges. The tournament structure would not work if we precluded ourselves against everyone that we've had in line. The tournament structure would not work if we precluded ourselves against every kid that had heard a lecture from us in Michigan. Does that make sense? It wouldn't work. So, unlike basketball camp, where you go to basketball camp and you learn from the other coaches who will never be referees, you're at a place with people who will eventually judge you. So the first thing you can do, number 5, is you have a chance to persuade a set of judges that you are everything we listed for the great debater. That you're hardworking, that you care about the community, that you're fun, that you're nice, that you teach other people. Everything we came up with, you have a set of weeks here to persuade the judges that that's who you are. Obviously, the reverse is true. You have a chance over the next 4, 7, 3, however many weeks you're here, to persuade us that you're not hardworking, that you're not a good person, that you're a jerk. And then we will judge you at some point in time of the year, and that's what we will remember. And so to pretend like we all go home from Michigan, wipe the slate, show up at the first tournament, and act like we don't know who you are, just isn't really reasonable. We are being influenced by you every moment we're together. And we're together for long days. We're together for 10-hour days together. In those 10 hours, you could do a ton to make us want to vote for you or to be afraid to vote for you. Number 4, you can get coaches for life. Roger Solt was my lab leader in this lab when I was here as a senior for 7 weeks. Roger Solt, I knew that our high school coach was somebody that was very generous and drove us to tournaments, and that was awesome, but didn't know anything about debate. So before the TOC, I emailed Roger Solt and said, Roger, you've been helping us all year. I got one last idea for you. Are you willing to listen to this? And he said, absolutely. What do you got? And we sent him the outline of a key negative position. He checked it out. He wrote us back, gave us great advice. You can build coaches for life. If you come from a school that doesn't have coaches, That's exactly what your goal should be, is to get coaches for life out of the lab leaders. Make them like you so much, that know that you're hardworking, understand your goals, recognize the resource you're coming from, and make them want to go out of their way to help you. There have been tons of times when kids have applied to Wake Forest, and then they've come up to me and said something in terms of like, I really enjoyed meeting you, it was really great, and then I basically look at them and say like, yeah, we've known each other for a while, right? Like like, oh yeah, I just didn't know if you remembered me. Like, yeah, we remember you. So use that. Don't be afraid to email people that you've interacted with. Understand that the worst thing they can do is say, I'm too busy right now, I'm sorry, which they can, sometimes I've had to do. But they could also give you great advice when you don't have other coaches. Number 3. Summer workshop jobs. It is awesome to work at a summer debate workshop. Most of you are going to go to college and someone's going to tell you that the solution for you to get a job after college is an internship, and they don't tell you what the truth of that is. What is the truth of that? They're all unpaid. By and large, maybe some of you all are really cool with the land of paid internships. By and large, almost all of them are unpaid. So debate workshops are a chance to come for a segment of the summer and do something really cool, make some money, hang out with great people, learn about debate whenever you're older, whenever you want to, whatever your contribution is, and then go on and do something and have enough money to actually do the internship, or it can just be a chance to hang out with brilliant people. Do you understand how cool it is to work at a debate workshop? It is awesome. Here's the problem. No one hires the troublemakers for the debate workshop. They just don't do it. Why would you ever take a gamble on hiring somebody to be in charge of kids when you didn't trust them when they were here? So, yes, all of you are probably smart enough to outsmart Travis Neal and like scare you around the dorm if you want to. All of you could sneak out of the dorm. All of you could do a bunch of things. And in your mind, you're just like, this is a random disciplinarian. But what it really means is you just never get a chance to do something really cool, which is to work in a summer debate workshop. So I highly recommend keeping that in mind. Number 2, college scholarships. Most universities, if you decide you want to do debate, you should ask them, is there any scholarship available? What do you got? We have a presidential scholarship at debate at Wake Forest. We give 4-way years, so 16 people on the squad have one, okay? Every year, over 100 people apply. We narrow that down, etc., etc. Here's a quote, actual email from a lab leader about one of the kids that applied for our scholarship. Blank is a bad student and weak debater. He skipped lab a lot, didn't really try, never turned in assignments, was a distraction to other students. His partner was a serious jerk, but he was worse in terms of being generally worthless. So, like, come up with whatever recommendation letter you think you have, like your high school coach and like your English teacher that really likes you. When we get that email about you, where do you think that, we trust this person's opinion because they worked with you for 6 or 7 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is. So your lab leaders are people that you need to make sure understand what you really want and care about in debate, because it makes a huge difference. And the converse of this, that's a negative side, the converse of this is that Brian Rubai may have single-handedly handed us one of the greatest Wake Forest debaters in the history of Wake Forest debate. A guy named Joe LeDuc from Spokane, Washington. Relatively nobody-named high school in the West Coast when he was in high school. And Rubai walks up to me at the Green Hill Round Robin and is like, the kid you want to recruit to Wake Forest is not here this weekend. His name is Joe LeDuc. You have to check this kid out. And sure enough, one of the Wake people that had been there at Gonzaga and worked with Joe was like, that kid is incredible. And so we ended up not looking at his record because his record wasn't great. His record didn't clear at the TOC. I think he won 1 debate or 2. One of them may have been a bye. And you would have never known it from looking at this kid just based on paper. But people went out of their way to find us. And you know what we did? We took one of the 4 scholarships and gave it to that kid. On a gamble, to some extent, based on just looking at the record. But it turns out to be maybe one of the best Wake Forest debaters of all time. He's been in the quarters of EBT twice, and he still has a senior year to go. So that's how good this kid is. And he's an awesome, awesome, great debater, cares about the debate community, and does a lot outside the debate community to make it a better place. So it can really help with, or hurt with college scholarships, what you do in the next couple of weeks here. And last but not least, you can win! If you believe me in everything that I have said so far, that one of the greatest factors in whether or not you achieve your competitive goals this year, your goal is to win the TOC, NBCA, or NFL this year, you're winning and losing it right now. Every interaction you have with someone that will hold a pen and either write your name or someone else's name, you're winning or losing. Does everybody follow that? You are building and reducing your ethos every time you interact with a person here who might be holding that pin. The RAs all can judge high school debate. The lab leaders all can judge high school debate. So recognize that if your goal, if you're just totally selfish and all you care about is winning, that's fine that's your perspective. I'm not going to critique. I'm going to say, well, I don't think it's beneficial for the community, but you've heard my perspective. I'm not going to rank on that. If your only goal, the only thing you care about is holding up the big trophy at the end of the year, then recognize